Hi, today we're going to speak about growth promotion. Now, growth promotion starts already by the decision of the bull that you're going to take to breed your calf. Then the calf is born, and then we can actually start interacting with that calf to increase and enhance the growth. First thing is, as when the calf is born, we can give it some multiminerals, some vitamin A injection, an intranasal vaccine, which opens the gate for the calf to give you the best production in the first few days of its life. Then the calf is quite adjusted to the new environment. It has a lot of milk and now it needs to grow. And there's a lot of vaccinations that's coming into play. We need to control the parasites. Then we come on today's topic, production enhancers. Now this is typically something that we're going to use towards the end of the calf's life, meaning before it goes to the feedlot or at weaning. So why would we use a production enhancement at that state? Now this production enhancement is while he's feeding on his mother, and we typically see an improvement in growth rate of between 4 and 8%. This is suckling calves. Now we're going to make the calculation at the end, and you will see that's a really good return on investment, at least 1 to 5. So that's the reason why we use production enhancement products to promote production. So the one that we're talking about today is one that Virbac has. It's called Virbac, and this is a production enhancement or production promoter which is injectable. A lot of the production enhancement products are implants. They need to be implanted in the ear. There's a specific place where they need to be implanted. There's the opportunity to do it wrong, like you misplace it, but not in the case with an injectable. The injectable is quite easy to inject and the whole dose is in the calf. A lot of producers can do the injection, so it's nothing new. This Virbac actually has an internal parasite and external parasite product in them to kill internal and external parasites, so that's an added benefit. But how does these production enhancement work, especially the one in Virbac, which is an estrogen? We get two types of hormones in every mammal. There's a lot more, but the two that I want to talk about now and the effect of its on growth is one is the estrogens and the androgens. So the androgens is a hormone that works directly on the muscle. So it works directly on the muscle, takes building blocks to produce a bigger muscle. But the estrogens, of which we're talking today, the one that we can inject, that works indirectly. So how and what do we mean with that? So indirectly is we have the product that we're injecting, and I have a human here, but it's absolutely the same. The hormone axis and how these hormones work is the same in humans as it's in animals. So we in animals inject this extra hormone, which works then, gives feedback into the brain or the pituitary gland, and at the pituitary gland we get a growth hormone release. That growth hormone is intrinsic in our body, in everybody's body. So that's a natural, already occurring hormone. So the one, the estrogen that we inject, just tells a gland in the body already to secrete growth hormone. And it's that growth hormone that goes and works on the muscle, on the one side, and on the other side it goes to the liver, and at the liver it makes that we have a release of intergrowth factor 1, and that goes to the bone to grow bone. So with this combination, the effect of this is that we get bigger animals, and that's exactly what we want. If we have a calf and we have the good genetics and we've selected a good bull, if we give these extra growth promoters, these calves will go bigger and produce more muscle, and that's more value for us at the end of the road. Estrogens or estradiol, that's a natural hormone. It's a hormone that's already occurring in animals as in humans. The zeranol is the one that we injected now and that we're talking about. It's a synthetic hormone, which means it's been produced in a laboratory to have the same effect as the original one. We see the same effect in the male side, the testosterone. The testosterone is a natural produced hormones in male, for example, mainly and the synthetic equivalent is androgens. So we use the synthetically produced growth hormones to enhance the growth in these animals. I like to point out that these synthetically produced growth enhancement hormones are technically the same as the already intrinsic hormone that we have in our body, which is already available there. But this extra injection just further enhances the muscle building effect. We see in humans, for example, they already use these androgens to build muscle. It's a sport, it's a hobby. So they already have testosterone, for example, in their body, but they use extra to build bigger muscles, as in this case, bodybuilders. So the hormone-free meat is a misnomer. You don't get meat that doesn't have hormones in it. The growth enhancement is just extra hormones that we use to get in extra effect, like bodybuilders do. Something else that I want to point out as far as safety is concerned. Firstly, I've said that we already have it in our bodies. Secondly, there's a lot of foods who already have estrogens in them, or hormones with estrogenic activity. Some common foods, for example, soya bean oil. And 500 grams of soya bean oil is about 1 million nanograms of estrogenic activity. Cabbage got about 1200 nanograms. Peas, 2000. Eggs, 17,500. Milk. If you drink a lot of milk, at 500 milliliters of milk, there's 65 nanograms of estrogenic activity. So if you eat beef from a pregnant female, for one or other reason she was pregnant and got slaughtered, and you eat that meat, there's 700 nanograms in 500 grams of steak or meat that you eat from her. Beef from an implanted animal, an animal that you slaughter after it's been implanted with these extra growth hormones, they have 11 nanograms. We must remember, when we inject these hormones, there's a high level of that. And then as time goes by, the body gets rid of that. So by the time you eat it, it's pretty much the same as it usually is. Like you see there, beef from non-implanted cattle, they already have 8 nanograms of estrogenic activity in them in a 500 gram of food. So implanted is just an extra amount of estrogenic activity that we give them, but compared to what we see in other food stuff, it's minute. Let me take it one step further. A pregnant woman produces about 90 million nanograms. A non-pregnant woman, 5 million. An adult man, even though his main hormone is testosterone, there is some estrogenic activity in a full-grown man. The pubertal children, they produce about 40,000 nanograms. So if you compare that into a 500 gram beef which is implanted, which has 11 nanogram, you can ignore that. I'm just going to put the same thing, just in a different perspective. Birth control pills, which are used to control some acne skin conditions, or in elderly women or women where the estrogenic activity has decreased, mainly called menopause, they get tablets, they get a treatment which increases the estrogenic activity. So one of those pills, if you want to compare that and get the same amount, or the amount of beef that you need to eat to get the same amount of estrogens in, then you need to eat 56,000 kilograms of beef. So what I'm just trying to say here is very safe. And then we administer it in a slow release, so there's very low levels that finally end up in the beef, as you've seen just now. Finally, even with everything that I said so far, you don't believe in, there's scientific bodies in the world who have looked at the safety of these growth promoting hormones, like the World Health Organization, the FDA in the USA, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. There's been a conference, Codex Alimentarius Commission. All of them have investigated and looked at that and found it to be safe. So after we've decided now, and we're happy that we can use it and it's actually indicated, where do we use it and why do we use it? So over and above the return on investment that we talked, but we try to alter the growth curve. So the growth curve here is a basic growth curve of the weight and the age, and typically in the womb it doesn't grow much. As we get, the calf gets born, we actually start doing to it, vaccinate and growth promotants and so forth. So then there's a very steep growth curve, and then it matures the animal. That's where we see on the top, and then it flattens out. So there where that growth curve has a steep incline, that's where we try and manipulate. So what you would typically see is an animal on the bottom is where we don't use growth promoters, and then after we use growth promoters we actually increase the frame of the animal, so the animal gets larger. As we have seen, more muscle is produced and bone, and the weight increases. And that's what we need as producers. When we look, the other effect of these growth promotants is on the following two things. If we look at the fat composition from birth to maturity, so typically in a feedlot animal, or now when we have these animals just before they get weaned, you will see here that the fat deposition in these animals from birth or really low weight is a direct line. So the percentage fat in the gain is higher as the animal increases in weight. So what we do with these growth stimulants, they actually decrease it, meaning that as they got heavier, we don't have the same amount, we actually have less percent of fat deposited. And it's that difference of these growth promotants which makes and helps us to grow the animal bigger. And in this case, where calves go to the feedlot, they don't go as fat calves to the feedlot. We haven't stimulated the fat cells, so the feedlot can feed them for a longer period. The other part where we make a difference is where we put proteins down. So here you can see a graph on the one side. The green is where protein, the percentage protein is in the gain. So when the calf is small, most of that gain is protein. That is our two main effects. It decreases the deposition of fat and increases the deposition of protein. Here it's the same graph, but just in summary, and that's typically what you would see. You would see in his days of life of that calf before we wean it, and you see that fat endpoint marketing target. That's typically where we would market it at the end of the feedlot stage. So we're going to use this product way before that. So as we said before, we're going to change this growth curve. So you can see at the growth promoter date, the blue arrow, that's where we inject them. And then you can see the red and yellow arrow, that's the increase of weight that we've gained over a certain period. So typically we will inject this product 60 till 90 days before we put the animal into a feedlot, or where you would sell it off to a feedlot. So over that, or after that 60 to 90 days, and because we've changed the curve of the growth, we increase the weight, and that weight is typically anything between 8 and 15 kilograms. Now why do we have such a big variance? That all depends on the genetics, depends on the food, it depends on the environment, supplementary feeding. I'm going to say more about it in a second. But that's where your advantage is this extra weight that we added. Now if you do a calculation at current weaner prices, I'm just going to take it at 40 Rand, it's definitely more than that. But let's take the worst case scenario. We only added 8 kilograms in 60 or 90 days. So 8 times 40 is 320 Rand. So it's very easily the extra value that you're having, and the cost that you incurred is the product that you had to give. So these products, they use protein or amino acids or energy. All of that comes through the mouth that the animal is eating into the rumen, where we have these volatile fatty acids, which is our energy source, and then obviously a protein, which is in the ration as well. And they use these as building blocks to build the muscle. So here's one example of international results where the weight that they've gained before they came to the feedlot with these growth promoters, they've actually carried on in the feedlot. So it's very safe and very good practice to use that before actually it goes into the feedlot, because you're not going to lose that weight in the feedlot. Some things that we just need to be aware of. There's definitely a minimum of nutritional that we have to maintain. For example, we have to consume enough grass that we already have a growth of 0.5 kilograms, because otherwise we don't have enough of these building blocks. So then we can add the hormone for improved growth. Things If you use them at the backgrounding, we actually need some more of these building blocks, so we need to have a growth rate of around 1 kilogram a day. So if we look at when do we want to use it, at the age, it's typically 60 to 90 days before marketing, and then which weight? A weight of 120 to 180 kilograms is an ideal weight to use this injectable growth promoters. So that brings me back to the questions. Why do we use it? It improves the growth rate. It gives you a lot of extra kilograms that you can sell. And that is doing that by reduced fat deposition and increased protein deposition. A minimum return on investment of 1 to 5 is guaranteed. Things that we just need to keep in mind when we do this, and that's the building blocks that we give these animals. This is just a reference that is internationally, it's valid. So the benefit that you give this calf before weaning, it carries over as far as production and meat quality is concerned to his finishing phase. Keep in mind a few things when you use these products. As I said repeatedly, the building blocks, the amino acids, the energy, the proteins, we need to support these animals. So something like a ryegrass, artificial pastures, is all important for this animal. If you have natural grazing, you need to supplement, and the supplementation of sweet felt versus sour felt differentiate. So talk to your nutritionist, they will give you advice and guidance here, but that is critical because we need enough of these building blocks once again to build the muscle. Creep feed is another nice and cost-effective way in supplying these building blocks where these growth promoters work on. You can use holistic management like the high pressure grazing with supplement feeding. You need to make sure that your micro and macro minerals, your enzymes are on good levels so that the meat that is produced is efficiently produced. You need to look at the internal parasites because they can actually hamper with all the building blocks that you give them through the mouth, that they're available to the body. When you give supplementary feeding, keep an eye on how you feed them, that you don't get rumen damage, so your nutritionist will help you with that as well. And then fetal programming, it's at this stage I'm just going to mention it because it's too large of a subject to explain it in full, but that you already prepare, you program the fetus already while it's with his mother to have a good or better growth. So the growth promotants is just the extra added benefit, but all these that I've mentioned now needs to be in place as well. If you don't have enough of these building blocks, energy and protein, then these growth promoters, they actually can lead to weight loss because they need these building blocks, so they actually break down some of the muscles in certain areas to actually produce the muscles in the hindquarters or something like that. So if you don't have enough nutrition there, you might see that there's actually a weight loss. And that explains with all these why sometimes people would say it's not working. But then all the boxes have not been ticked. This brings me then to the end of my presentation. The moon is coming up, and I hope you have a good growth.
We just want to thank Dr. Andy for the insightful information, how to get more, maximize your calves, future growth, how to get more profit. On the Virbac side, we have got a product called Zeromec. It contains zeronol and ivermectin. It's an injectable product, 1 ml per 50 kilogram. For more profit on your calves, more growth or future growth, it's as easy as 1 to 3. Just contact your Virbac representative for more information about the product to help you to get more out of your calves.